Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I am specifically interested in clause 19 of this bill, which sets out the arrangements as to how the Energy Security Investment Mechanism will operate, so that the energy profits levy will cease if the 6-month average prices for both oil and gas fall below certain thresholds. This provision follows on from the announcement of my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, in his spring budget, that the energy profits levy would be extended to 2029, though it would be disapplied when energy prices return to normal. My interest in this issue stems from my roles as a constituency MP, where activity in the energy sector in the North Sea is vital to the local economy, and in chairing the all-party parliamentary group for offshore oil and gas. I have no particular issue with the mechanisms in clause 19, though I am worried that the current short-term approach to fiscal policy for the oil and gas sector does undermine other government objectives, in particular the enhancing of the UK's energy security, bringing new, well-paid jobs to coastal communities such as Lowestoft, and in delivering our net zero targets. Madam Deputy Speaker, I acknowledge that my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, at the current time has an unenviable role and faces a significant dilemma. He is, in many respects, between a rock and a hard place. He needs to balance the books, and he needs to support those families who are continuing to struggle with the cost of living crisis. It is thus understandable that he looks to energy companies to pay more as oil and gas prices have risen, they have been at very high levels. However, it should be pointed out that they have now fallen back to long-term averages. There is a significant risk that in pursuing such a course, he could imperil the inward investment which is needed to create long-term sustainable jobs in coastal communities for those very people who are currently struggling to make ends meet. Madam Deputy Speaker, the North Sea has been the UK's economic saviour for nearly 60 years. Some might say that we are now nearing the end of this particular story. That is not the case. The North Sea is transitioning from being a source of fossil fuels to the long-term home of renewables. That transition needs to take place as quickly as possible, but in a smooth and seamless way. This requires a stable and long-term fiscal policy, which I'm afraid at present we do not have. The decision to extend the levy for a further year was unexpected by industry and presents a significant further challenge to investor confidence. Madam Deputy Speaker, energy companies are making investment decisions on projects which quite often have timescales of the order of 40 to 50 years. The fact that in the UK there have been 4 fiscal changes in the last 2 years does deter and deflect investment elsewhere. These businesses are globally footloose, and they will go to those countries where the fiscal regime is favourable and has a large degree of certainty about it. In the past, the UK has ticked this particular box, though at present we are not doing so. It should also be emphasised that these businesses, that as well as operating worldwide, have interests in a wide variety of energy technologies, not just oil and gas, but also in the low-carbon businesses of today and tomorrow, offshore wind, hydrogen, carbon capture, utilisation and storage. If these businesses, if they find the fiscal regime unfavourable for oil and gas, they will invariably not invest in these renewables, which are so vital to our future. The initial feedback following last month's budget is that these concerns are well-founded, investment decisions are being delayed, and funds could well be diverted elsewhere. Offshore Energy UK, who provide the Secretariat to the Offshore Oil and Gas APPG, have identified £200 billion of investment, which was awaiting the green light and may not now happen. Cornwall Insight conclude that prolonging the levy could weaken investor confidence at a time when the UK is seeking record levels of investment to deliver the transition to net zero. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are at risk of imperilling that next chapter of the North Sea, an ongoing story that can not only deliver economic regeneration, but can also, over the remainder of this decade, provide 50 gigawatts of offshore wind, 10 gigawatts of hydrogen, 4 carbon capture, utilisation and storage clusters, as well as supporting the homegrown oil and gas industry and in helping meeting our decommissioning commitments. In short, Madam Deputy Speaker, unleashing an enormous amount of economic activity which can cascade right around the UK. To be fair to the government, Clause 19 of this bill does seek to address these concerns, though I would urge them to map out a long-term strategy for offshore energy, building on the success of the 2021 North Sea transition deal. They are now adopting a similar course in the nuclear sector. We need to get back to doing the same in the North Sea. It is appropriate, Madam Deputy Speaker, to comment on the opposition's alternative proposal to extend the windfall tax. There is a real worry in the energy industry that this could exacerbate the worries that I have outlined. OE UK highlighted that these proposals could lead to the loss of 42,000 jobs and the wiping out of £26 billion worth of economic activity. There is a concern, which I would hope they could allay, that the opposition could be looking at removing those capital and investment allowances that are vital to securing inward investment. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are where we are, and I fear that some damage has been done. However, there is work to do to rebuild the UK's reputation as a prime destination for investment in the energy sector, and we need to get on with that task without delay. The industry has noted the government's commitment to honouring the sunset clause, and I urge my honourable friends on the front, the two ministers on the front bench, to provide those further reassurances that are needed to reinforce this message, both this afternoon in their responses and as this bill progresses through Parliament. The importance of ongoing and meaningful dialogue between government and industry cannot be overemphasised. In the period from 2012, after the last windfall tax, up to 2021, when the North Sea transition deal was agreed, this interaction was very much taking place. It has been lost in the past three very eventful years, but it needs to be restored as quickly as possible. If it is, then we can still embark on a new golden era for the North Sea. An era of a homegrown and not an outsourced energy transition. An era of reindustrialisation and not deindustrialisation. And an era of enhanced energy security and economic prosperity. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Shadow Minister.